What if I told you that the reason your relationships feel so exhausting right now, the reason going on a date feels exactly like a grueling job interview,
Yeah.
and the reason you feel so intensely lonely, even when you're texting someone 24/7?
Right. Which is so common.
It is.
Yeah.
What if I told you it's because you are practicing modern love in a world that was actually built for soul love?
Wow. Yeah, that's a heavy thought to start with.
I really want you to just think about that for a second. Swipe culture, situationships,
Oh, yeah.
attachment trauma,
Mhm.
dopamine addiction,
Mm.
the paralyzing fear of commitment, ghosting.
We all know the symptoms.
We absolutely do,
Yeah.
because we currently have more access to love, or, well, at least the illusion of love, than any other generation in human history.
Right.
And yet somehow we are completely emotionally malnourished.
We're starving.
Exactly. So today we're going on a deep dive into a really fascinating set of sources that compares the 13th century mystical soul love of the poet Rumi with the fast, filtered, and fragile nature of our modern algorithmic love.
And we're also looking at how these two contrasting frameworks actually play out in your brain. Our mission for this deep dive is to provide you with a clear, advanced psychological and spiritual roadmap.
Right.
By synthesizing 13th century mysticism with modern attachment theory and neuroscience, we really want to help you understand the hidden mechanics of your own behavior so you can finally stop suffering in your relationships.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it's wild that we have more access to love than any generation in history, yet we're just so emotionally exhausted. Okay. So to start, we have to look at Rumi.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, I always knew Rumi as a poet. You see his quotes on inspirational posters or like social media feeds all the time.
Yeah, the aesthetic Instagram posts.
Exactly. But reading through our sources, you realize he was actually a spiritual revolutionary. He was a master of divine longing. And there's one famous quote of his that perfectly sets up the massive divide between his era and ours.
I know exactly the one you're talking about.
Yeah, Rumi wrote, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it."
What's fascinating here is the completely different starting points between modern love and mystical love in that quote.
Right.
If you look at how we operate today, modern love asks an entirely external question. It asks, who completes me? The entire focus is on scanning the horizon to find the right person. But Rumi's love is entirely internal. It asks, what in me blocks love?
It's a total paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Modern love assumes you're lacking something that you have to acquire from the outside world.
Right. And Rumi's approach assumes that love is already your natural state, and the only reason you aren't experiencing it is because you've constructed these internal defenses.
Which leads us to the brutal reality of how we are currently trying to acquire that love. The sources outline this perfectly. We're dealing with hyper-choice overload,
Yeah.
validation-based bonding, and ego negotiation disguised as romance.
That's a great way to put it.
Since most of you listening are already familiar with the idea that dating apps are essentially designed like slot machines, I want to skip the basics and ask you about the deeper mechanics.
Okay, let's do it.
Why does an unread message or someone simply fading away, why does that hurt so much more than an outright no?
That comes down to a psychological concept called intermittent reinforcement, combined with the brain's complete intolerance for unfinished loops.
Unfinished loops, right.
Because dating apps and texting protocols deliver rewards unpredictably. You never know when the match or the message or the validation will arrive. Your brain becomes absolutely obsessed with the pursuit.
So it literally is like gambling.
It's exactly like gambling. Intermittent reinforcement is actually the strongest form of behavioral conditioning, period. When someone just disappears or leaves you on red, your brain is left suspended in a state of high alert anticipation.
Wow.
There is no closure, so the dopamine loop stays open. You aren't actually longing for the person. You are agonizing over an unfinished chemical loop.
I think we've all been there. Staring at a read receipt for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Feeling your stomach drop.
Wondering if you should double text.
Yes. Feeling completely out of control. It's such an exhausting way to live because you don't actually crave the person on the other side of the screen.
Yeah.
You crave the possibility.
Exactly. Modern love creates intense emotional anxiety because it's fundamentally built on uncertainty, performance, and replaceability. Rumi's love, by contrast, was built on surrender. He believed love is the fire that destroys the illusion of separation between you and the rest of the world.
So let's talk about that surrender. Because Rumi's concept of love wasn't about romance at all. It was about ego death.
Yeah.
It was about the burning away of your false identity.
This is deeply rooted in the Sufi philosophy of fana, which translates to the dissolution of the self. To Rumi, love is not a possession to be acquired. Love is a transformation to be undergone.
Modern love says, do they text me back? Or are they my type?
Right.
Well, Rumi says, let yourself be undone and become no type.
That's exactly it.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here. Because in modern dating psychology, we are constantly told to set firm boundaries.
Sure.
We're told to know our worth, protect our peace, walk away from red flags. This raises an important question. Doesn't dissolving the self, or ego death, completely contradict the idea of having healthy boundaries?
That is such a good point.
How do you do both without just becoming a doormat?
That is the crucial distinction to make. When Rumi and Sufi philosophy talk about dissolving the ego, they do not mean dismantling your core sense of safety or abandoning your physical and emotional boundaries so someone can abuse you.
Okay.
They mean dissolving the specific part of your ego that is constantly calculating, the part of you that's keeping score, analyzing the transaction, and asking, what am I getting out of this exchange?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, fana is about letting go of the false performative self. The avatar you project into the world to seem impressive or invulnerable. You can have absolute ironclad boundaries about how you are treated while simultaneously having zero ego about needing to be seen as right, superior, or in control of the relationship.
That makes a lot of sense. The calculating nature of modern dating is actually captured in the source material with a really funny analogy. It says modern love is basically a LinkedIn profile with flirting.
It really is.
We literally approach dating by asking about income, height, body count, and emotional availability scores.
Oh, like a checklist.
Yeah, we evaluate what someone brings to the table like we're hiring for a corporate position.
We contrast that transactional mindset with Rumi's transcendental alternative. Rumi's view is about seeing the divine in the other person.
Right.
It's the belief that their very presence transforms you. Love isn't a legally binding contract of mutual benefits. It's a doorway to a higher state of being. We have moved from soul recognition to resume evaluation.
Shifting to that resume evaluation mode is a huge reason why everyone is so deeply tired of dating. It takes a massive amount of energy to constantly update your own resume and audit everyone else's.
Absolutely.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The sources add an advanced psychological layer to all of this that explains why we stay in these exhausting cycles. Modern relationships are heavily dominated by anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and trauma bonding. Could you break down what trauma bonding actually means in this context? Because that term gets thrown around a lot online.
It really does. A trauma bond is a very specific psychological phenomenon. It occurs when there is a cycle of abuse, neglect, or extreme emotional unpredictability, followed by a period of intense affection and reconciliation.
So the extreme highs and lows.
Exactly. That volatile cycle creates a powerful chemical cocktail in the brain. You get cortisol during the bad times and massive hits of dopamine and oxytocin during the good times.
Which wires you to crave the cycle.
Right. The victim becomes biochemically addicted to the cycle, confusing the intense relief of reconciliation with profound love. In a broader sense, attachment theory shows us that we don't actually choose our partners based on compatibility, even if we tell ourselves we do.
We choose based on familiarity.
We choose them based on familiarity. So if your childhood was chaotic or love was always conditional, your nervous system interprets chaos as home.
Wow. So if chaos feels like home to your nervous system, then a calm, stable, secure partner is going to feel boring to you.
Exactly. Your brain will literally tell you there is no spark or chemistry. Rumi would look at this dynamic and say, you are attracted to what you have not healed.
You are attracted to what you have not healed. That completely reframes the whole idea of having a type.
It really does. Modern love tries to fix this deep internal pain with intense chemistry, distraction, and validation. Rumi's love heals this pain through deep awareness.
Which leads us right into the trap of validation. I want to ask you, the listener, to pause and be really honest with yourself right now. How much of your love life, your swiping, your texting, your agonizing over what to wear on a date, is actually just a search for validation?
That's a tough question to answer, honestly.
It is. How much of it is just a desperate need to be chosen, to be admired, or to be desired?
Validation is a highly unstable currency. The psychological truth is that the more you seek your validation externally from the attention of a partner, the number of likes on a story or a match on an app, the more powerless you feel internally.
Because you're handing over control.
Yes, you are handing the keys to your baseline self-worth over to strangers who are dealing with their own unhealed wounds. Rumi's love isn't about being chosen by someone else. It's about becoming so full within yourself that love just naturally flows outward.
There's an incredibly powerful concept from Rumi in the sources that speaks to this internal fullness. He wrote, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop."
I love that quote.
Modern love is out here whispering, "I hope they like me," and Rumi is shouting across the centuries, "Become the ocean."
It's a profound shift in identity. When you know you are the ocean, you stop begging for drops of attention.
I have to share this comparison from the source material too, because it highlights how ridiculous our current priorities are. It says, modern love is thinking, "I saw your story, but didn't reply to maintain my mystery."
Oh my goodness, yes.
Meanwhile, Rumi's love is, "I disappeared into divine union and completely forgot my phone existed."
We really do play these calculated microgames of attention, while the mystics were chasing universal connection.
So what does this all mean? How do we bridge that gap? We've talked about the philosophy of fauna, the neuroscience of intermittent reinforcement, and the trap of validation.
Right.
The source material outlines a highly actionable 5-step roadmap to actually shift your nervous system and your mindset from algorithmic love to soul love. Let's walk through this roadmap in detail. Step 1 is detox from dopamine dating. The source recommends taking 30 days completely off dating apps, off validation scrolling, and out of those endless, vague talking stages.
Yes.
I can already hear people listening to this and panicking. 30 days feels like an eternity in modern dating. People are terrified they'll miss the one good person who happened to log on during that month. Is going cold turkey really necessary?
It is entirely necessary if you want to break the intermittent reinforcement loop we discussed earlier. You cannot heal an addiction while taking small doses of the drug.
That's true.
Taking 30 days off isn't about giving up on love. It's about resetting your baseline dopamine levels. You need to let your nervous system calm down enough so that you can differentiate between genuine connection and a trauma response. If you feel intense anxiety at the thought of deleting your apps for a month, that resistance is your loudest diagnostic indicator that you're using dating for external regulation rather than genuine connection.
Okay, so once you clear the noise with that detox, you move to step 2. Identify your love pattern. The goal here is to look at your relationship history not as a string of bad luck or terrible exes, but as a diagnostic report of your own internal wiring.
Exactly. You want to treat your past as data. Journaling is highly effective here. Do you constantly chase emotionally unavailable people? Do you suddenly lose interest, feeling smothered the second someone is actually stable and available?
Right.
Do you secretly fear being fully seen, so you pick partners you know deep down won't work out? You have to map the familiar chaos your nervous system is seeking.
And identifying the pattern leads directly to step 3. Practice ego observation. This is where Rumi's philosophy of dissolving the false self becomes a daily practical tool. But what does ego observation actually look like in practice? Say it's a Tuesday night, your partner is late coming home, and you feel a fight brewing.
Ego observation is the sacred pause between a stimulus and your reaction. In that scenario where your partner is late, your calculating ego might immediately jump to, "They don't respect my time, I need to punish them with the silent treatment so I regain power."
We've all been guilty of that.
Ego observation means pausing to recognize that thought process. You ask yourself, is this my fear talking? Is this my ego trying to protect itself by seizing control? Or is this an opportunity for genuine communication?
So it's about shifting the response.
Right. Instead of acting from the wounded ego, you might say, "I felt really anxious when you were late because I value our time together." Most arguments in relationships are just two wounded egos violently negotiating for control. Ego observation diffuses the need to control.
Which obviously requires intense inner stability. And you build that stability in step 4. Build internal fullness. This is the absolute core of the roadmap. The source lists therapy, meditation, finding purpose, fitness, and shadow work. I want to pause on shadow work because that's another term that gets tossed around social media without much context. How does someone actually do shadow work in relation to their dating life?
Shadow work involves turning toward the parts of yourself that you consider unlovable, ugly, or shameful, your shadow, and integrating them rather than repressing them.
Okay.
In dating, we often use partners to distract us from our shadow. For instance, if you are deeply ashamed of your own neediness or fear of abandonment, you might unconsciously attract highly avoidant partners.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, their avoidance triggers your neediness, forcing your shadow into the light. Shadow work means finally sitting with that shame, acknowledging it, and learning to comfort yourself, rather than expecting a romantic partner to magically validate those feelings away. When you integrate your shadow, you achieve internal fullness.
Because when your life is truly rich, you don't date out of a sense of emptiness. You date out of overflow. You aren't showing up to a date asking them to complete you or fix your shame. You're showing up whole, offering to share your fullness. Modern love begs complete me, but Rumi's love says, I meet you as whole.
And when you operate from that wholeness, you are naturally ready for step 5. Slow down intimacy. Fast intimacy is a hallmark of modern dating, but it almost always leads to fantasy bonding.
Let's define fantasy bonding. That's when you meet someone, you have one incredible 3-hour coffee date, and by Tuesday you are already imagining your shared apartment and how your dogs will get along.
Precisely. You are projecting all your hopes, unfulfilled needs, and fantasies onto a stranger. You are in love with the potential of the person, not the reality of the human being sitting across from you.
Right.
Slow intimacy forces you to dismantle the fantasy. It creates actual secure attachment because you observe them over time. Do they regulate their emotions when they are stressed? Do they take responsibility when they mess up? Are their actions consistent with their words over a period of months?
It takes time to see all of that.
As the source points out, chemistry fades, but character remains. You cannot assess character in a weekend.
If we pull all of this together, the dopamine detox, mapping the patterns, observing the ego, integrating the shadow, and slowing down the intimacy, we start to see the bigger picture of what Rumi was trying to teach us. Love isn't just a biological imperative to put us off. It is a path for spiritual growth.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Rumi saw it as the ultimate path to awakening. In this view, the pain you experience in relationships is not a punishment for making the wrong choice. It is a revelation.
Revelation.
Every time you are triggered by a partner or a date, that trigger is simply a signpost showing you exactly where you are not yet free.
Instead of asking, why are they acting like this and ruining my day, you start asking, what is their behavior revealing in me? Why does this specific action cause me so much internal panic? That is a massive shift in personal power.
The source summarizes the ultimate shift perfectly. Modern love is about performance, possession, pleasure, and fear. Rumi's love is about presence, surrender, transformation, and freedom. The problem isn't that love itself is broken or that there are no good people left. The problem is that we are starving because we are frantically trying to consume love instead of actually becoming it.
You're trying to consume love instead of becoming it. That really is the thesis of this entire deep dive.
The final takeaway the source leaves us with is a powerful reminder that you truly do not need better dating strategies. You don't need a funnier bio, you don't need to learn new texting rules, and you certainly don't need more options.
Right.
What you need is deeper self-awareness and integration. Love is not something you go out and find like a lost set of keys. It is uncovered. When you remove the fear, when you stop the ego from negotiating every interaction, and when you heal the attachment wounds, what remains underneath all of that is love.
I want to leave you, our listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over today. We talked about how every trigger is just a revelation and how we attract what we haven't healed. So if every frustrating, confusing, or difficult person you date is actually just a mirror reflecting your own unhealed wounds back at you, what is the person who is driving you the absolutely most crazy right now, secretly trying to teach you about yourself? Take that question with you into your day. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.